What's up, everybody? Welcome back to JQ Cars. Today we are looking at best first cars. Now, these are enthusiast related cars. Of course, you can always just get the best RAV4 or Civic or CRV or Accord or whatever that you can afford, right? Just go get a new Honda, Toyota, whatever. But if you want to have some fun, maybe able to roll your own gears, maybe not, we have a list broken down through a few different price points. We're going to go through enthusiast cars, whether this is your first car in general or your first enthusiast car. The criteria here is that it's a somewhat newer car, because in especially the lower end, you can get a lot of fun cars for under 10 grand, whether that's 350Zs or older Miatas or whatever. You can go really expensive and go older as well and go with like an S2K or something like that, right? Like throughout budgets, you can have more fun cars, but they won't necessarily be able to be taken to a dealership. And especially if you're newer in cars, you might not want to look up a specialty mechanic, depending on the car, performance mechanic, whatever, or you might not be comfortable doing your own work. So these cars are modern enough to have modern features, some safety features, or even just Apple CarPlay, or be able to just be taken to a dealership to be worked on for the most part. And so that's going to be kind of the main criteria. And of course, it has to be fun to drive. So we're going to run through my list through different price points. They're not ranked in any order, just by price point. So starting out under 15 grand, so from 0 to 15 grand, there's really only 2.5 options here. You'll see why I say 2.5. That are fun cars, that are mostly reliable, that you can still find dealerships to work on. The first one, and this is the 1.5, is the Fiesta and Focus STs. The Fiesta ST is the better handling one, but it's less practical. The Focus ST is more practical, of course. You can only get these in a manual, so you got to want to row your own gears. But a lot of enthusiasts really want to row your own gears as long as you're able to. And you can find plenty of these, especially Fiestas, in under 10. For some ones that are a little higher mileage. Everything on this list I searched under 100,000 miles, so you still got a lot of life in them. But especially if you go higher mileage, you can get both of these under 10 grand. You can get lower mile ones under 15 grand. And when the price of a new car averages about 50 grand, being able to get a fun enthusiast experience where you can get Apple CarPlay in it as well, if you get some of the younger ones, some of the newer ones, for under 15 grand, great handling cars, row your own gears, reliable power plant, then this is a great car to get. The Focus RS is not on this list anywhere because I was so on recommending the reliability of that EcoBoost. The later model years, they fixed some of the problems, but those ones, of course, are more expensive, and you can have plenty of fun in a Focus ST or Fiesta ST. The other one I have under 15 grand is the Fiat 500 Abarth. It's a little 3-cylinder. It sounds actually really good. It's a little tossable, fun car. You can get a manual. I believe you can also get an automatic as well. You can easily find these under 15 grand. If you go a little higher mileage, you can find them under 10 grand, just like the Fiesta and Focus ST. And it's another fun, tossable, really well handling car. All these are front wheel drive, unfortunately, but they all handle really well. The Abarth sounds really good, and you can row your own gears, and you can park it just about anywhere because it's so small. So under 15 grand, there's not a lot of options. We're really looking at the Focus and Fiesta STs and the Fiat 500 Abarth. Now we're moving on to the 15 to 20 grand list, and this has a few more options. Starting off with number 1 is the ND Miata, especially if you get the ND1s, the earlier of the generation. You can find some with CarPlay in them. Once again, under 100,000 miles, you can get them with a manual or an auto, whichever you prefer. Especially if you're dailying, it's your only car. Auto is certainly an easier option to go with. But just like every Miata, you can drive it at 10/10, handles good, fun car, pretty decent gas mileage. Of course, if you're driving hard, you're never going to get great gas mileage. And that's really not what we're focused on with first fun cars. But overall, it's a really fun car. Miata is always the answer, and it was an easy answer on this list. Then after that, we have the MK7 Golf. If you expand your budget into the 20s to 30,000, to the 20 to 30, you can find Mark 7.5 Golfs, GTIs, but Mark 7 GTI, modern enough, you can find them with CarPlay. They're reliable enough. They're one of the least reliable cars on this list, but by modern standards, most cars are reliable. There's still plenty of dealerships for Volkswagen. You can get them serviced at the dealership, so they're easy to own for someone who, doesn't want to work on their own cars or doesn't, really know how to research into finding good specialty mechanics, you can take these to dealerships still. One of the best hot hatches of all time is the GTI line, right? The Golfs throughout their history in period are among the top of the hot hatches. Mark 7 GTI, still very modern driving experience. You can get it in manual or you can get it with a fantastic DSG, and definitely a fun car to drive. And this car, and I should have mentioned the Focus STs and Fiesta STs, this has a lot of aftermarket support. Miatas do as well. Fiat 500 Abarth, maybe not as much, but the cars on this list overall do have a lot of aftermarket support, and the Mark 7 GTI certainly does. The GTI scene forever has been super popular and had a lot of aftermarket support. So the next one on this list is the FK8 Civic Si. The Civic Si, of course, it's a Honda. It's super reliable. SIs are underrated now that we get the Type Rs in America, but Civic SIs have always been loved. There's a bunch of aftermarket support. It is manual only, so you do have to row your gears. You have to decide that for a daily or for, first car if you're just getting comfortable driving, if you're comfortable with rowing your own gears all the time. But super reliable because it's a Honda, great handling car, enough power, really just a fun first car. The FK8 Civic Si is certainly more well regarded in the looks department than its Type R bigger brother. And, once again, you can just take it to a Honda dealership to get things serviced. A lot of aftermarket support and just a fun car to drive in general. Then finally, we have the ZN6 BRZ/86. That's the last generation, not the current generation. Just like all the cars on the list, you can find these under 100,000 miles in good condition, clean titles, for under $20,000. You can get them in a manual, you can get them in automatic, although this is especially a car that you want to go manual on. This is only the second rear-wheel drive car on this list, this and the Miata. But the BRZ and 86 have endless aftermarket support, just like everything on this list, other than maybe the 500 Abarth so far. Really fun to drive. It's known as one of the best manual transmissions out there. Definitely fun, rear-wheel drive. So if you want to get into drifting at some point, it's a very popular beginner drift platform. You can get Apple CarPlay. You have some modern tech and features in it. Even if you go, 2016, 2017, it's still a very modern car. Fun, tossable, rear-wheel drive, manual car. So moving on to the $20,000 to $25,000 range, we're back with the Mark 7, but you can get a Golf R Mark 7, and this is probably the one that I would trust reliability the second least on, or probably the least. This and the GTI are probably the least reliable, but now you get all-wheel drive, you get even more horsepower, you can get a manual, you can get a DSG, and you can't get a manual in the new Golf R, but you can get in the Mark 7, 7.5. They dropped it for the 8, so if you're looking for a manual Golf R, you can find these under $25,000 with under 100,000 miles. You can get it with CarPlay, some modern features. The interiors are arguably nicer in the 7 and 7.5 than they are in the 8 and the 8.5. So you can get a premium experience. The only thing you do have to watch over Volkswagen is they are German cars, so you got to pay German car part prices, but they are mostly reliable. And once again, there's just a bunch of aftermarket support. So you can get a manual, all-wheel drive, turbo 4-cylinder, pocket rocket. It's not really pocket rocket anymore, the older ones maybe. But you can get a really fun all-wheel drive hot hatch for under $25K. The next car on this list, the first V8, is the 6th gen Camaro SS. Once again, you can find them under 100,000 miles. A little bit earlier in the 6th generation, a couple years into the 6th generation is where you're really going to want to look. But V8, is that the LT? It is the LT at that point, but the LT V8s, manual, you can get them with a manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, Murica Power Coupe. They don't look quite as good as the 5th generation, in my opinion, although they did grow on me from when they were released, but you can, and the visibility's bad because of the design, but a good-looking rear-wheel drive V8 manual for under $25,000 is really hard to beat. Sticking with the V8 Murica theme, you can get Chargers and Challenger Scat Packs for $25K and under. Now, once again, it's going to be higher, closer to 100,000 miles, but you get the big 6.4-liter Hemi V8. If you want 4 doors and a Hemi V8, you can get the Charger. Now, you do only have an automatic, but the ZF 8-speed is awesome. I love my Charger. I love that transmission. The transmission shifts really quick, especially considering it's not a dual clutch or a DSG. And if you want to get a manual 6.4-liter V8 Murica rear-wheel drive, You can get the Challenger. Now you lose the 4 doors, but even though you don't have the 4 doors, the back seat's still huge. These have huge trunks, so there's great practicality, although the gas mileage is probably the worst on this list, but they have great cargo practicality. They're huge, roomy interiors, big, loud, old school style V8s. You can get the Charger with 4 doors, you can get the Challenger with a manual, and even if you get the autos are excellent. Some of the best non-dual clutch autos you can get are in the Charger and Challenger. They're so good, they're the same ones that Alfa Romeo has used in the Stelvio and the Giulia because they're just excellent. Then we move on to another sedan, and that's the VA generation WRX. That's the previous generation. The VA generation is the first one where it became just the WRX and it was no longer the Impreza WRX. But you can get the last gen WRX, you can get a manual automatic, all-wheel drive, turbo flat 4. I think the last generation looks much better than the current generation. There's so much aftermarket support. And, you know, if you're trying to fit into the vape community, you can also get the Subaru to help you fit into the vape community. But they're good-looking cars. They're great cars. They have all-wheel drive, so they're good for all weather. They have plenty of power, especially if it's your first car, manual or automatic, look better than the current generation. And a car that I genuinely considered when I was looking at the Charger, and still would consider to this day. Then finally on this list, kind of mixing things up, we have the Fiat 124 Abarth. Now we have the ND Miata on here, and if you know about the Fiat 124, you know that it's the same platform, but the 124 Abarth is more expensive because this is a turbo Miata essentially. No Miata except for the NC, is it the NC or the NB, Mazda Speed has ever come turbo, except for that and the Fiat 124 Abarth. So if you want a Miata, but you want a little more power and you're willing to spend up a little more, you can get the 124 Abarth. I think it looks, you know, in its own way, it looks as good as the ND Miata does. There is no RF, so you're not getting the automatic or the electric hardtop. But you can find hardtops for them. But if you're looking for the roadster experience, you want a turbo Fiat 124 Abarth. And even though it's a Fiat, you can still find dealerships to work on it. It is literally the ND Miata. So everything you can say about the ND Miata, you can say about the Fiat 124, unless you're just talking purely which one looks better, or you're talking about the RF. But it's a turbo ND Miata. I think it looks good. And everyone always wants more power in the Miatas. This one has a little more power. So finally, moving on to the $25,000 to $30,000 range. This is where you might find stuff like the Focus RS, but just from knowing people that have had them or have had that EcoBoost in a Mustang, I don't trust that EcoBoost's reliability. And if it's your first car, you probably don't want to buy one that you have to worry too much about reliability. They're not like old American cars from the 2000s and earlier unreliable, but in modern day, they're fairly unreliable from an engine standpoint. And I know almost everyone I know either had to get an engine replacement, built the engine before it could blow, or almost had it blow and had to have some somewhat serious engine work. So that's not in here, but that would be in this price point. So starting off is a car from Ford though, and that is the pre-facelift S550 Mustang GTs. The EcoBoost is nowhere on this list for the same reasons I just listed the Focus RS. That comes more into the $20,000 to $25,000 range. And if you're not too concerned with like modding or the reliability, that is a good option as well. They're fast, they handle well, but we want reliability. We know the Coyote is reliable. These ones started in 2016, and the facelift, I believe, was 2019 or 2020. I'm off for a year or two there. But the pre-facelift ones, they still have like 420 horsepower V8s, rear-wheel drive, classic Mustang, a beautiful looking car. I think the S550 pre-facelift looks better than post-facelift. I'm a big fan of the way they look. They are probably the best sounding car on this list. For me, that's going to go to any one of the V8s, but the Coyote just sounds so good, especially once you put an exhaust on it. A lot of aftermarket support. You can get Apple CarPlay for under 30 grand. And honestly, of all the cars on this list, unless you want 4 doors, this is probably the #1 car if your budget can go all the way up to $30,000, in my opinion, because you just can't beat the classic Mustang aftermarket support, sound. Community in American muscle cars and pony cars can be a little iffy at times, depending on where you're at. But I love the S550 Mustang. I love the pre-facelift. Absolutely go with the 5.0 if you're considering this. If you can only afford the EcoBoost, I highly recommend saving for just a little longer to get the Coyote in that. I love the Coyote If I could buy a Charger with a Coyote, I would have a Coyote instead of the 6.4. But finally on this list, we're going back to the FK8 Civic. This time it's the Type R. If you like or don't mind the boy racer style, which I actually kind of like it because it's a hot hatch-ish, and sometimes I just think that that should be crazy looking. You can get these under 30 grand, super reliable. They're Hondas. They're the first Type R that we got in America, so that's already cool. Like I said, you just got to deal with the styling, but they have enough power, really good handling. Manual only. The Mustang is manual or auto. So if you're looking at this price point, you're fine with manual only. FK8 Civic Type R. Crazy amount of aftermarket support, of course, but just a good looking, well, I think it's good looking. A lot of people think it's ugly, but a controversially good looking, reliable, fast enough, fun car with a great manual transmission. Of course, it is front wheel drive, but you know, if you're just looking for an enthusiast cool car, I don't know if that's always necessarily the biggest factor. And there is the rear wheel drive Mustang on this list. And it's more practical than the Mustang, right? The Civics are more practical in general, but that's the other option at 25 to 30K. Like I said, if you want to get into more unreliable stuff, you can start looking at, you know, some older M3s, you know, Focus RS, some older Audis, some older Mercedes. Like you can start looking into the luxury brands, or you can go even older and, you know, you can get older Porsche, you know, the early 2000s Porsches, depending on the trim, you can find them for under 30K, depending on which model and trim. And so, of course, you can always go older, but if we want something that can be taken to a dealership, is pretty much reliable, has good aftermarket support for the most part of the cars on this list, a good driving experience, you can find manuals or autos depending on the car, and just a first enthusiast car or first car in general and you're into cars, I think this is the definitive list at this point. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did I miss a car? Am I wrong about something on my list? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you like talking about cars. If I, you know, buy a new car or get a chance to review a car, whether that's to a friend while I'm on travel, whatever, of course that will come. But for now, most of this will just be talking about car topics, which I'm always happy to yap, whether it's to people or to a camera. But if any of that interests you, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And check out the links in the description if you're more into TikTok or Instagram, or you just want to follow me on Twitter because you like me. But thank you again so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.